Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Judi Glova, and today is day 4 of the Burnout Solution series. And I have collected some of the best experts for you to teach you about how to have your own burnout solution. And I'm excited because today is all about alignment. Communicate effectively to strengthen your relationships, build trust, prevent conflicts, and heal pain. But I also want to remind you that we are meeting every day throughout this online series in our Facebook group called the More Than Enough Women's Circle. I'll be live this evening to answer any of your questions, and I really want to make sure that you can take action on the tools and skills that you've learned each day. So if you haven't already, head on over to the More Than Enough Women's Circle. So before I dive in and kick off, I do want to introduce you to Susan Harrow. Susan is a world-renowned media coach and author of the best-selling book, Sell Yourself Without Selling Your Soul. For 29 years, she's helped clients shine on Oprah, CBS's 60 Minutes, The Today Show, Good Morning America, and the New York Times, Parade, People, and Vogue, etc., etc. More than I can mention. Currently, she's created a course called True Shield, Verbal Self-Defense for Girls that teaches young women, 12 to 14, how to protect themselves in 10 of life's most difficult and dangerous situations that they'll likely encounter and stay safe. Her newest offering is a women's empowerment course that helps prevent sexual harassment in the workplace, in social situations, and at school. So, Susan, I'm just so excited to have you here. And I know, so welcome. And I want to remind everybody, our focus and our topic for today, and I'm going to read from my notes because I want to get it very specifically. Our focus for today is how to avoid being called a bitch, a braggart, and a ballbuster and get what you want, right? Because
I think that's what we fear most.
We fear most of those 3 B's,
yeah, we
of
do.
Getting put into that box of those 3 B's. So first off, let's just kind of talk about that title and how that promotes or creates stress in the workplace.
The title of being, well, I think first thing, like even hearing you read my bio, I was kind of like inwardly, like kind of cringing. You know, it's like, it's hard to hear good things about ourselves, you know, and not to start to make ourselves small. And I don't know if you're familiar with the tall poppy syndrome. You know, a woman who stands out or is afraid of getting smited, you know, and I think that we all have that inside. So what women do is we're relational. So we are extra nice. And that's where sometimes things can be misinterpreted because we're trying to be nice and not offend anybody. Sometimes people then can take advantage of us and say, oh, there's an opening, you know, or it's an opening for an advance, or it's an opening for something inappropriate, or it's just an opening to be pushed around. Absolutely. You know, men are more concerned with being respected. So they want to be on top. They want to, there's jostling to be on top. So that's natural. And just know that that's part of both of our natures, but some of it is ingrained. Some of that is taught, what we call to please, right? So we just want to be aware of that first off. What's my response? Like you say something nice about me and you start to say that is, can I just take that in? You know, neutrally, like start to be able to just open yourself for those kinds of things, let them sink in. And especially with compliments.
Yes.
We're always shoving those off, but a negative thing comes to our heart and we keep it forever, right?
Exactly. And what I really want to emphasize, because we've already touched on at least 2 golden nuggets, right, in our conversation so far. But I love the point that you made that as women, we tend to want to be liked, whereas men tend to want to be respected. So it's somehow inherent or learned, right? We get some programming as being women. We get programmed into wanting to be liked. And that goes down the road of the people pleasing. And boy, oh boy, can that also lend us down the road of overwhelm and overcommitment because we just say yes to so much and we don't necessarily mean to, but we want to be liked. It's like that desire to be liked. And it's such a great key distinction that I want people to notice. And then I also want to go back to that tall poppy syndrome that you mentioned. I've actually worked a lot in Australia, and some of our listeners are in Australia, and that's a real true social norm. Social norm there. It's like, yep, you don't, you stick your head up, and you really have to be careful how you're perceived. And that's actually for men and women. So.
And I see this a lot on the internet too. I really see it in social media. It's like somebody says something nice or something fabulous that happened, and they said, but don't hate me.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, so why do we do that? We're actually heading off what happens in our social situations. I'm not criticizing that. I mean, that's an actual effective strategy, because you are sort of smiting yourself before somebody else smites you. It's like, this great thing happened to me, and, don't attack me for it. So one of the things that we want to be super conscious of is, which you touched on in the beginning, is making sure that everything is congruous, making sure that our face, our words, our body is all saying the same thing when we give a message, and the tone. So it's the quality of your tone, your voice, as much as it is everything saying what you want, physically, emotion, mentally, everything, because, we want to pay attention to our shoulders slumping, the intensity of our eyes. Are we smiling? Did you want me to give you the example of the?
Well, actually, what I want to do is actually go through the 4 qualities again. So the qualities are that we need to be congruous with, right, when we're communicating. One is our tone of voice. Yes. The other one, what are the other 3?
So we want our facial expression.
Okay.
It's majorly is facial, verbal, body. And then also we have tone, and included in our facial expressions, we want to pay attention to our eyes. Are we giving soft eyes, hard eyes? Are we smiling when we're delivering a hard message? In newscasters, you will see them, if they're talking about a flood, like what's going on right now, they're not smiling. You're not, because that is unhappy news. If you're talking about a winner of Publishers Clearinghouse, you would be smiling, right?
Right.
But sometimes we're not aware of what our face and our body is the message that it's delivering. So that's why I highly recommend that you video yourself and start to understand what kind of responses you are giving that are conscious or unconscious. Right. In these different situations. And like what you said, when we're talking about burnout, if you're like super tired and you're so exhausted and you're on edge, your voice might get sharp. You're at the end of the tether, like that idea of being at the end of the tether. So you might attack, or you might be more intense than you want, and get more demanding. So just start to notice your own default when you're under pressure, and when you're at the end of your tether. You know what I mean? Like I know my default is I get sharper. I get, what's the word? Oh, my mother calls me Queenie, which is not a nice term. when I start to get that more demanding. Right. So yeah.
So yeah, I would also, I just want to kind of summarize what we've said, because we've said so many things. So these 4 areas of being congruent in terms of our communication, it obviously cuts down the possibility for confusion or mixed messages, sending mixed messages to the other person. But it also, in some ways, sends mixed messages to ourselves, because if we have those learned habits of nodding, because I'm a nodder. I always nod, and I'm like, I'm listening, and I just want to let you know that I'm listening. But a lot of people think that I'm agreeing with everything that they say, and I'm just
and you're not agreeing. That's right.
Right.
Right. So
being congruous with what I'm doing, and letting people know that I'm listening. But the other thing that you mentioned too is, when we get under pressure and we're at the end of our tether, a lot of these 4 things can get very, sharp, So how we're communicating.
Or however you do, some people collapse. Some people ramp up, some people collapse. Just know what your default is so you can monitor it. All of this is really about awareness. What do I do? How can I shift it in the moment? When I'm media training women or anyone, what we look for is like, what did you do well and what do you want to shift? And what happens under pressure? Oh, well, I started stuttering, when somebody was starting to be aggressive,
Right.
be aggressive. And you go, okay, so what can we do? We can actually take a breath. Pause, relax, let it go. To start to become aware of your own responses under particular situations so you can have a different response the next time. And that's the practice of it. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And share that story with me, because I know you've already told me a story about one of the people that you worked with and what she realized about what message she was sending and how she really could shift and be more powerful.
Mm-hmm. So I was media training a lawyer I'm not actually going to say the company, but it's a very prominent company. And one of the things and she was talking about some very serious issues in the culture that she was going to be on the news for, like immigration. So it's a very serious topic. Families are being separated, children are getting lost, everything that's going on right now. And what was happening when she was talking is that she was smiling the entire time and cocking her head off to the side and talking about these really serious issues. And she was not aware of that at all, that she was smiling the whole time, because that's just how she communicated. She was a really nice person. And when she saw herself on video, and when I pointed out, she's like, oh my God, I had no idea. And that still was like to work on, notice, is your head cocked? So you are not in your strength position. Mm-hmm. Now, if we sometimes cock our heads, that's sometimes when we're agreeing or being more submissive or being more flirtatious.
Mm-hmm.
And just start to notice when that's appropriate and when it's not, right? Mm-hmm. And so as soon as she became aware of that, she began to really catch herself every single time. Oh, I just smiled. Oh, my head's going to the side again, mm-hmm. and start to really work on that, because her message was serious. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can even relate to that, because when I was in the corporate world, I definitely did a lot of the head cocking, and I would do the nodding, and I would be listening to someone. And sometimes it was, a male colleague that I wasn't necessarily agreeing with what they were saying. Right. I wasn't agreeing what he was saying, but it would come across as that. And then there would be some kind of a conflict, right? So just like saying, well, I thought you were agreeing with me. And it's like, no, not actually. So even how we hold ourselves, and a lot of burnout is caused by people pleasing. How can we not give those messages of, or how can we not miscommunicate, so that, and again, you've definitely outlined them about, our tone of voice, is our tone of voice riding on the energy that we want it to ride on? Is our eye contact really direct, right? And are we really, really concentrating on the person that we're talking to? And then it's the words, right? It is the words that we speak, mm-hmm. and how are we conveying those, and our body language, right? Mm-hmm. So how we
all
can
of those things, but before that, it is your mindset. It's like a friend and I were joking. Sark and I were joking. Do you know Sark? Yeah, you were smiling like you knew her. Oh, like, that's a social cue, right? You were smiling. I took that as agreement. You knew her. Yeah. We were talking about Maya Angelou, and one of the things we said is, do you think anybody is going to try to hug Maya Angelou? No, I don't think so. No. Like, she has already predetermined, you are to stay there. You have your boundaries. I have mine. So what we want to do mentally as well as physically is establish our boundaries and our awareness, which has everything to do with not just the proximity of someone, but starting to really imagine that ahead of time, to really think about what it is that you want. What do you envision for yourself? Whether it's a meeting, or whether it's a call with a client, or whether you're talking to a teacher about your child's performance at school, whatever that is, it's about sending that mental picture first. In Aikido, so I'm a black belt in Aikido, and one of the things that we always do right away is we're always trying to what's called capture the other person's center. And what that means is that we're looking to catch the other person off balance. And now we're not always doing this, but in a negotiation, but what we want to be aware of is, are we centered? Are we the one who has the center? And do we establish the center? We don't let someone else establish center. Once you're with another person, you have your center, they have their center, and you create a new center, which is your center together. That's the cooperation. So, in Aikido, what we're trying to do is get someone off center so we can throw them. But the beginning step is to connect our centers together. So, so what we're doing in that kind of cooperation is connecting our center together. And then sometimes we need to put the other person off balance, or sometimes we need to draw them in for agreement, whatever that is.
Right. And when I think of burnout,
to get the agreement, sometimes we have to create that pattern interrupt to, which what we have is what's called an atemi, or you're going to the face and now, I'm off balance. And now I can take you in another direction. It's the same principle. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, when I think about people that are in overwhelm or anxiety, they're not in their center, and they're not really able to they're not intentional. So another way of you had mentioned that you want to establish your center. It's like being intentional, or having that mindset of, I want to be centered in where I am.
If you get knocked off center, you bring yourself back. So that is part of the practice too. Because we're always getting knocked off center, myself included, all the time. It's just about getting back to that center as quickly as possible. So, I'm knocked off my center. Poof. And it can be as simple as a breath. Our breath is so important, because what happens when we're under pressure or we're overwhelmed is we don't breathe. And my sweetie and I, he's very hot-tempered. We have a joke, because I say, take 10 breaths. And we joke that it's not this. That is not 10 breaths, So it's starting to have that, and notice when we're punched in the stomach, or when somebody says something mean to us or disagrees with our idea, you go, it's okay. Take a breath, recenter.
Fantastic. I love that. And I want to also make the bridge, because I know that there's so many correlations with the program that you're teaching those teen girls. In the current work environment, it's become such a heightened awareness of the Me Too movement and whatnot. And it's like, give us as much insight as you can about how we as women can actually set ourselves up so that we are preventing a Me Too kind of moment, or that we are being centered and kind of minding, having that practice of being centered, and bridge, and again, I'm trying to bridge a lot of things here, but can you help us kind of understand?
Yeah. So, I think that the first thing is, what I was talking about when we were talking about boundaries. How close are you to someone? But also, like, are they getting too close even when you're, if they're looking over you for a report, or when you're on the subway? It doesn't matter, where you are, to start to notice that and create a safe distance. So that's physical. But also, if somebody says something or does something inappropriate in that very moment, you want to respond right then. The best thing is to respond in the moment when it's happening. So if somebody says or does something that you don't like, or you don't want to continue, you address it in a neutral tone, unless it's sexual harassment that needs to be, and I'll talk about that in a second, which maybe needs a little bit of a more intense. So, but just a general thing, if somebody is disagreeing with you, or if they've maybe touched you up here inappropriately, you could even as simply as just take their hand off and say, please, the only contact that I would like is us shaking hands. And in that moment, especially, and this is with me too, I really recommend that you ask for agreement for the future. So in the future, can I count on you to only shake hands with us? Because anything else doesn't work for me, or, you don't even have to give a reason. You can just say, can I agree? Because I just gave a reason, but I think that even the less you speak, the better. So in the future, can we agree that the only physical contact we'll have is shaking hands? Yes. if that agreement is violated, you point it out. We agreed that we were only going to, and you focus on the positive. You don't say the negative. We don't say that you were going to touch me here again. You say, we agreed that we were only in the future going to shake hands. And you just, and he, oh my God, I just forgot. That's fine, right? So we have to take the situation. You're not going to report somebody, right, if they're just like, oh God, of course, so you really want to be reasonable if somebody's doing something, to really start to notice their intent. Right. It's your intent, but notice their intent. Yeah. And then if they don't comply, then you do want to establish a consequence. If this happens again, and you're going to be recording it, if this happens again, this is what I'm going to do. Yes. Offense number 3. So that's a nice way to handle it. But I always err on the side of giving the person the benefit of the doubt and not assuming the worst, particularly with like older men, who have been gotten away with this forever. Most of the time, if they call me dear or whatever, I'm probably not going to even address it. Right. I'm not going to shift them. It's not worth it. So I think it's what's important to you. The most important thing is, if something makes you uncomfortable, that's the key.
Right. And I love how, you're just, it's so spot on. It's like having a significant distance, and significant distance is space, right? We can definitely hold our space and have that agreement and make a clear agreement. And I think that message, I also want to just underline and star, because so many times we make clear, we'll make a clear agreement with someone else, but like you said, you actually have to hold it. You have to keep the agreement with yourself that you've just made with that person. And if they do deviate from that, you just remind them, say, actually, we agreed that we were just going to shake hands. So it's not only the agreement that we make with others, but it's the agreement that we keep with ourselves.
That's so important, because that's where we really wear away at our own self-worth and our self-esteem, is when we break the agreements with ourselves. It's not with others. It's like, darn, I wish I didn't I did that again. And not to beat yourself up about it, just to notice and go, okay, next time. And, some things can be repaired, in the next moment or in the next few days, and some things, they're just over. So you have to let them go and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And really being able to, like you said, just not judge ourselves. It is all a work in progress, and we're all trying to do the best we can. And I think what's also really interesting is when we think about how we're communicating with other people, being able to keep those boundaries is so important, because not only, I talk about having a leaky bucket, we can say things like we were talking about the 4 places of being congruent. Our message and how we speak to ourselves and how we speak to others is also a way that we leak energy, whether it's, and creates overwhelm and anxiety.
That's so true. Yeah. And I love that Gandhi said, my life is my message. So these are all things like, how do you want to be in the world, with yourself and with others? I think that's the overall question. And to start to really think about that, every day I review my thoughts and actions. What did I wish I'd done differently? Because there's plenty of things.
Yes.
With my partner, in a work situation with my clients, it's like, oh, I wish I would have said this instead of that, or done this instead of that, or responded in this way instead of that. And it's just like, note to self. And I review that every single day. I love when parents do that with their children. Let's go over your day. I think we can start with our girls. What happened? What were you happy with? What would you change? What were you thinking about? What would you think about differently? And start to make that a practice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. No, being able to connect, I think, connection, I call connection currency, and it's the currency of valuing somebody. It's like when you really value somebody, they can feel it, and that connection is just priceless. And I kind of want to ask one more question about, a lot of what you do is you teach people how to communicate effectively, And when I think about all the conflict that we deal with that causes stress in the workplace, right? You've given us so many, tips about what we need to be conscious of. And is there anything else, that comes to mind in terms of how we can decrease our stress around conflict?
You really talked about like not beating yourself up. I think that's a super important one. And to look at our actions and our words with almost an outside eye, and start to really assess that. I think that's one. But I also wanted to chat about, I'm just looking at my notes because we had really talked about some other things too. The other thing that I think I wanted to address is something that I found really fascinating is the work of Harry Grayson. And he worked with relationships, and he only worked with one person with couples. And really, because I think this is a little bit undervalued. He worked with couples. They never talked to each other. There wasn't about talk. It was about he had asked them, and these were couples who were estranged or moving toward divorce or were fighting all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say to them, what is it that you loved about this person in the beginning? What drew you together? And I think that in our minds, if we start with the premise of looking for the good in people and keeping to remember that there was an Aikido teacher who came who was so beautiful and reminded me that the founder of Aikido, O-sensei, had told him to, in your belly, think of your belly as a baby, as pure mind. So starting with that blank slate, or starting about thinking about what do I love about this person, and really trying to connect at that deeper level before we ever open our mouths. And this is what you can do even before you meet a person, or even before, it's before the conflict starts, is I'm always thinking about how can we come together for both of our highest good? So that sort of leaves out the cult of personality and stuff like that, because personality and people are so annoying. Charlie Brown said, or Charles Schultz.
Why can't they just be like me?
Right? Said, I love humanity. It's people I can't stand. And we're difficult creatures, all of us. So I continually try to get back to pure mind and to thinking about what is it that I can love about this person. Maybe not in the midst of a conflict, but afterwards, or because lots of times we're really hot-headed about it too. And we think about how that person's done us wrong. And how many times have we actually been wrong and made an assumption? Even when somebody's missed an appointment or something, you're like, oh my God, they dissed me. They don't respect my time. And they're like, they had an emergency and they had to go to the hospital, right? We can't imagine that. And so that's what we're always doing to ourselves. So I want to just say, let's come back to ourselves, think about pure mind, baby's pure mind, and to start from that premise.
Yeah, and it's coming from that place of not taking things personally,
That's
right?
a really big
So
one.
much.
That's
So
yes.
the golden nuggets were, not taking things personally, really looking for the good, coming from that pure mind, and yeah, I mean, I like how that it just kind of connects us beyond the conflict. Like sometimes we're so in the weeds, and it's like, how can you get that bigger perspective of being able to see the situation for what it is, and not just, like you said, the humanity versus the personality.
Right.
For sure. So I've definitely noted down at least more than a dozen golden nuggets here that we've talked about today. But if there was just one thing that you would want our businesswomen to remember more than anything, what would it be?
I love that you said don't take things personally, because I think that's a super hard thing to do. I think I would like to leave you with the idea that each moment is new, and that there is a choice, another choice in each moment. Like it comes that fast. And, and that what's over is over, and what's here is here right now. And then we can think about how we want to respond in the future.
Wow. Well, I think I love the power of choice, because so many times we give it away. And when we think that we don't have a choice, it's like we just put ourselves on the back foot. Like, we don't have the power. But you're right. Every moment we have a choice of how we want to respond, how we want to communicate, and how we want to make clear agreements. So this has just been so...
And I'm nodding in agreement.
You're nodding in agreement. And you've been noticing my nodding all along, I'm sure. Oh my gosh. Well, Susan, thank you so much. This has been so rich. We've had so many golden nuggets of information about how to be great with our communication and dealing with conflict, and how to avoid being called a B word, a braggart or a ballbuster, and how to get what we want, because that's truly our essence of just having pure mind and pure spirit of being able to do the best we can. So thank you so much. And I want to remind everybody to click below. There's an amazing free gift that Susan has for us. And I also want to remind you that we do have our bonus gift. So if you've already purchased the Backstage Pass, you'll be able to get her bonus gift. And if you haven't, don't worry, there's still more time. And it truly is one of those burnout solutions, because you don't have to worry or stress about missing any of these great interviews and the great content. So you get a chance to do that. And I also want to leave you with one final note from me, which is, instead of burning the candle at both ends, let your light shine brightly, knowing that you are more than enough. More importantly, you can create your own burnout solution, and you don't have to do it alone. So we'll see you in the next awesome interview, and I'll see you later in the Facebook group for any Q&A and insights. And we'll see you then.